Chapter 139 of Attack on Titan is probably one of the most polarizing endings to a series that I have ever seen. And because of that, this is a rather difficult topic to approach, as many will either wholeheartedly agree with me or completely disagree with me. In a way, I too am conflicted. Before this chapter, Eren was my favorite protagonist of all time, so to make this video almost pains me. But it is for that same reason that I feel I should make this video, and the same reason I am passionate about this topic. Again, this topic is not one I plan to tread lightly, so I'll try to be as thorough and reasonable as I can. And whether you agree or disagree with me, I hope this can result in a healthy discussion. So without further ado, please allow me a moment of your time to discuss why I believe that Chapter 139 of Attack on Titan not only undermines Eren Jeager's previously established character, but utterly assassinates it. I struggle with knowing exactly where to start with this, but I think it best if I start at Eren's plan. The very first thing that we find out in the chapter is that it was Eren's plan all along to become a worldwide threat so that the world would rally behind his friends for saving the world from him. Now I want to clarify something. I do not mind the plot of this kind of ending. Eren being a major enemy that the world could unite against, even if incompletely, is not a bad ending in and of itself. What I take specific issue with is that this was Eren's plan all along. The reason I believe this worsens his character is because of how it recontextualizes multiple past scenes. Let's take for example Chapter 100, the scene between Eren and Reiner. This chapter is so dense with characterization for Eren. It is a practical feast for people who like to analyze text. You learn so much about Eren's philosophy in this scene and other small scenes in the Marley arc. We learn about his understanding of morality, pervading circumstances, and the empathy he now shows Reiner, the one who got his mother killed. His expression of understanding to Reiner and the fact that he chooses to fight anyway because the world has forced his hand is so rich in character. The words, "I just keep moving forward until my enemies are destroyed," is one of the most iconic lines in the entire series. And now it means not that. Because Eren was never resolute in the destruction of his enemies like this. And to be clear, this is not me saying, oh, my boy isn't edgy anymore, where is my MC that readily murders everyone? My point is that this is the character as we were presented. This is the character that many people, myself included, practically fell in love with. And that is someone he simply never was. And it is not just this single scene that expresses this philosophy that is now recontextualized. The series spends so long developing Eren to the point that when Eren declares his intent to kill everyone outside the walls to protect the ones he loves, no one doubts that he means this because the series spent so long building to it. Even early in the series, he was committed to the fight with little to no moral nuance. And then, as he says to Zeke, he was always this way. However, when he encounters Reiner's situation and is challenged by the moral complexities of the world, he is forced to acknowledge them. Yet despite this, he continues to fight anyway. Because he values his freedom. He values the freedom he was born with a right to, and he cares about those close to him above all else. That is the original meaning that most have drawn from this scene. However, because Eren's plan was instead to be a villain that people rally against, a martyr for peace that isn't even guaranteed, this scene is recontextualized to mean something else, and in the process it removes meaning. Another scene that has changed meaning is when Eren convinces Ymir to lend him her power. It's also an amazing scene. We see Ymir's past, how she was both a godlike figure but also a slave. How she was always controlled by the narratives around her that determined her fate. But Eren is the first person to tell her who she is. She's not a god that has to be put on a pedestal. She's not a slave to anyone's orders. The restorationists who revered her, the Marleyans who feared her, and the king that looked down on her were all wrong. Eren is the first person to tell her that she has the right to decide. She is just a person, and he leaves it up to her decision what happens next. She was indeed waiting for 2,000 years for someone, and the implication is that she was waiting that long to be told these words. But that was never the case. Meaning is removed from this scene and replaced with new meaning. Nuance is not added, it is stripped away and replaced. Attack on Titan overall, though, is actually very good at recontextualizing past scenes. A good example of this is one of the very first scenes in the series, Eren giving his narration and the walls being broken down. It's a great introduction to the series. It establishes the core themes of freedom, how Eren feels trapped and confined within the walls like cattle, and the fear of the Titans. It is not until the Marley arc where we see Reiner and Bertolt's perspective of this same scene. We see Reiner's mental state, his uncertainty at what is right contrasted to his determination to see the mission through. It adds to the original scene without taking away from it. When I go back and rewatch episode 1, I am going to think both about how Eren sees this moment and how Reiner sees this moment, because I have the added context, and there will be so much to appreciate from that. Yet when I reread Eren's talk with Reiner, I will not be thinking of Eren's conviction and philosophy. I will be thinking about his hypocrisy when he asks Reiner why his mom had to die. When I go back and reread how Eren freed Ymir from her mental bondage, I will instead be thinking about how Eren did nothing, how Mikasa actually freed her through actions she hadn't even done yet. Because this man right here, this man who says that he will keep moving forward until his enemies are destroyed, this man who has resolved himself to commit atrocities, to kill those who oppose him no matter how much it pains him, to attain the freedom he was born with a right to, is lying. When Eren asks Reiner why his mom had to die, he is no longer confronting Reiner and coming to an understanding of what made Reiner do what he did. He's just torturing the man, with everything he does being for the sake of reaching the end point of the series. That being said, Eren lying about his motivations is not some deep analysis. It is made plainly clear that Eren did all he did to make himself everyone's enemy. That is made explicitly clear in the second page of the last chapter. So let's take a moment to go into Eren's actual character, not the lie we were presented about it. And this brings us to Eren's true motivation, because we have several moments that go into his true nature in this very chapter. Like when Armin asks why he would go through with the rumbling anyway, and what does Eren say in response?
You know, it's funny. I don't even remember anymore.
Are you fucking serious?
Oh my god, no! Could you imagine? 2 years and that's what I give you? Man, that'd be unsatisfying.
Okay, jokes aside, I do mostly get the intention of this moment, I think. It seems to me to be a callback to how this fight for freedom was always in his nature. That isn't to mention, I've seen plenty of other essays on their own interpretation of this moment. I get that there is meaning people have drawn from this moment, and I won't deny that there isn't any sort of thematic depth. I will say, though, that I think this moment is kinda bullshit, because Eren does know why he would have wanted that. He does know why he would commit the rumbling. At any moment, he has been questioned on his motivations. He has always given the same answer. He has always been driven by the same philosophy previously. And that answer has always been one of the core themes of Attack on Titan.
そんなの決まってんだろ。俺がこの世に生まれたからだ。
Now one could argue that this answer is at least somewhat implied. After all, even I, someone who has said that Eren's character has been assassinated, is saying that this core part of Eren's character is actually still there, kind of. This brings me to my last point, and it is one that I am not even entirely sure of myself, purely because of how vague this plot point is. This brings me to the contrived nature of the Founding Titan. So, Eren claims that everything he did since the medal ceremony when he saw the future was for the sake of reaching the endpoint, where he does the rumbling, becomes everyone's enemy, and dies to make his friends heroes. He is essentially so tied to this fate that he kills his own mother to ensure that he has the motivation to take actions that would eventually lead him to that point. He is the cause of his mother's death, the same death that became the groundwork for his fighting ideology that built off of what was already his fundamental nature. Meaning that part of his character is still intact, yet he he is also tied to that point of fate that he would make it happen anyway, meaning that he is aware that he was the cause of his mother's death, his primary motivation, but also would have still committed the rumbling even if he wasn't going to be stopped. And we know this is a part of his character because in chapter 131 we see that demented part of him in his own psyche. You can't lie in a representation of your own psyche. However, maybe that was actually just something he showed Armin to further enforce to Armin that he needs to be defeated. So either he lied to Armin when he told him that everything he did was for the sake of reaching the endpoint, or that look into Eren's psyche was also fake. Add all of this onto the fact that the Founding Titan made Eren unable to distinguish past, present, and future, basically forcing him to go to that endpoint and distorting him, something that was never alluded to once, by the way. And I'll be honest, I don't know what to make of all that. I can't tell what is supposed to be a subversion of expectation, a character lying, or just a straight up plot hole or inconsistency. This idea that Eren was lying, but also these parts of his character still being intact, combined with the vague workings of the Founding Titan and how they affected his judgment and actions, it all combines together into such a mess of a twist. It all leaves me asking, who even is Eren? Where are the blurred lines between his actual character, the lie he presented himself, and the influence of the Founding Titan? I've seen people hail this twist for its ambiguity, for it being open to interpretation. And don't get me wrong, there are endings that I myself have applauded for similar things, but this ambiguity does not add anything to the story. It leaves Eren's characterization confused, overly convoluted, and makes his actions contrived. In this chapter, Eren became less of a character and more of a tool moved along by the plot, his agency removed. And maybe you like this Eren, and I cannot fault you for that. After all, liking something is subjective, and maybe you see something in this that I do not. I won't pretend that this ending is devoid of any narrative or thematic depth or meaning. There is clearly meaning that can be drawn from this, or nobody would draw meaning from it. But to me, it was not worth the cost. This is not the man that I followed for over 100 chapters. This is not the man who fought for freedom, no matter what. This man is not Eren Jeager.